greet all the people.
Shabbat Shalom. I think Shabbat everybody Shalom. Knows everybody here. So do we need to go around and introduce ourselves?
Does everybody know Rabbi Denker?
I'm Steve. I'm Steve on most days. So we proceed. We have an opening prayer. We have a sheet. We're reading something from the sheet of it?
Yes. We begin with our opening prayer on our handout.
You're supposed to read it.
You have a sticky? No.
I do.
Oh, okay.
Just before Hallelujah, though.
Oh, nope, wrong sticky.
Okay.
May the door of the synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love and all who are lonely for fellowship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May the synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
So we welcome everyone into our Mishkan, our tent this morning, with Ma Tovu on page 74.
Yaakov,
with our prayer for the body on our handout.
For the first time, an event occurs in nature. It is called a miracle. Later, it comes to seem natural and is taken for granted. Let your worship and your service be a miracle each day. Only such service, performed from the heart with enthusiasm of fresh wonder, is acceptable.
Page 78. Elohai,
Elohai, Neshama, Shenatatavi, Teorai. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatatavi, Teorai. Atavirata, Atayitzarta, Atanefakdali, Meshamra Bekirvi. Elohai, Elohai, Teshama, Shenatatavi,
And we continue with our prayer for Shabbat, our psalm of joy for Shabbat on page 96. 96. Mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon. V'hagi b'boker chazdecha, ve'emunacha b'leilot, alei asor v'aleina, ve'alei higayon b'chinor. Mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simachtani Adonai b'po'alecha, b'ma'asei yadecha aranei. Magalu ma'asecha Adonai, me'od amku machshevotecha. Mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon, u'zamer l'shimcha elyon. A reading from our handout.
Believe that the universe speaks to you, and you will be privy to endless chatter. Believe that God leaves you secret messages to uncover, and your life becomes an endless treasure hunt. If you believe that this is nonsense, then you will encounter a world that is mute and devoid of guidance. Messages from God are everywhere. Listen, watch, get it on a whisper. God is leading you down gentle paths.
Page 100. Hallelujah. 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 Bekira uzo. Hallelujah. Bikuroza. Hallelujah. Bekirov gulo. Hallelujah. 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 Beteka shofar. Hallelujah. B'nei v'albechinor. Hallelujah. B'tov u'machol. Hallelujah. B'mini ve'ugav. Hallelujah. 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 B'tzias le'shama. Hallelujah. B'tzias le'shua. Hallelujah. B'tzias le'shama. Hallelujah. B'tzias le'shua. Kol hanshama. Tehalelia. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Do we read the Scottish or not?
Yotzer.
I'll go right to Yotzer. Okay, 110.
Shabbat shalom.
We got company.
So we continue with our prayer for creation this morning. We continue with our prayer for creation this morning, Yotzer or page 110, all of the wonders of creation. Gabe and Lauren, have you met Rabbi Denker yet?
No, we have Steve.
Gabe, nice to meet you.
David,
Gabe.
Lauren.
Gabe,
Gabe.
Gabe.
yes.
Gabe and Lauren. Shabbat shalom.
He's joining us all the way from Ann Arbor.
Oh, we got a big Ann Arbor
Yeah.
contingent this morning.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer orei osher oseh shalom uborei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uborei osher oseh shalom uborei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uborei osher oseh shalom uborei et hakol. Oseh shalom uborei et hakol.
I hear you. How deeply have you, 112. How deeply have you loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion, on account of our forebears whose truth led you to teach them the laws of life. Be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. V'ha'einenu b'toratecha, v'dabek libenu b'mitzvotecha. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Together, gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you draw us near to your great name, that we may acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise to you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael b'ahava.
וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, לחיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם.
Emet.
A reading for redemption on our handout.
Steve, somebody gonna read?
Henry?
Henry?
Henry, is that you? Redemption?
Oh, yes. Who is like you, God of mystery and majesty, distant and present, thundering and quiet, the beginning and the end, the atom and the cosmos, the darkness and the light, the one and the all, pillar and foundation, artist of sea and sky, author of the miraculous and the mundane, source of life, blessing and sustained creation. Who is like you, glorious in holiness, to whom we praise, to whom we give thanks, the God who redeemed us from Egypt, the God who parted the sea, the God to whom Miriam and Moses led us in song.
Mi chamocha on your handouts. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. No rise for Tsui or Israel together on page 122. Tsui Israel,
Kuma be'ezra Yisrael, Uvei Kinumecha, Yehuda be'Yisrael. Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We continue with a silent Amidah, either the words on the page or the words of your heart.
you have the list of the sick? I didn't bring it.
I will go grab it. So we are going to begin our Torah service, and Henry is our Torah reader of the day. Thank you. And for those of us following along in our 8th time, Henry is going to be reading on page 963.
Are we reading the Torah or just?
Just from the Chumash, yeah.
Okay.
Just from your sheet.
Henry, it'd be easier if you
Yes.
get up there.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to.
You don't have to. Usually, I think in that context, what's your usual custom?
What was the question? Torah blessings?
We don't actually take a Torah, do we do the Torah, the blessings?
Yeah, it's up to him.
Yeah.
They're not that long.
Okay. What, Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach L'Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim V'noten Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
And this is line 16, verse 16 that I'm starting with. It's chapter 35, and I don't know what page it's. I don't have your book there, but it's
It's on page 960.
okay. V'im bichli barzel hikahu v'yamot rotzeach humot yumam harotzeach. V'im ba'even yad asher yamut ba hikahu b'yamot v'yamot rotzeach humot yumam harotzeach. O bichli eitz yad asher yamut bo v'hikahu v'yamot rotzeach humot yumam harotzeach. Goel hadam hu yamit et harotzeach b'figao bo hu yamitenu. V'im b'sinam yadafenu o hishlich alav b'tzia v'yamod. O ba'eva hikahu v'yado v'yamod mod yumam hamaker. Rotzeach hu goel hadam yamit et harotzeach b'figao bo. V'im b'feta below eva hadafo et o hishlich alav kol kli below tzidiyah. O b'chol even asher yamud ba below raot v'yapel alav v'yamot v'hu lo oyev lo v'lo mevakesh ra'ato. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koah.
Well done.
And I did the legal way here too, see?
ישבח אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ויברך וירפא את החולים. We ask God's blessing of healing for all who are ill or in pain, but on this Shabbat, particularly for Adam Brook, Carol DeVore, Deb Ford, Richard Hittow, Joel Katz, Sally Keaton, Debbie Kolb, Rhonda Coatson, Stephanie Lasher, and Nancy Walters. Are there any other names?
Joe Gutman.
Sid Diamond, Israel Swally, and James Gordon.
הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם וישלח להם רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, השתא בעגלא ובזמן קריב, יאמרו אמן. May God send each and every one of them a complete and speedy healing of both body
You still need them for Steve.
Steve,
You still need them for Haftarah. Sorry. Repeat after me. Dear God of our ancestors,
Dear God of our ancestors,
help us renew our faith.
help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days.
And
Restore our strength of body.
help clarify our minds.
Help clarify our minds.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Rejuvenate our life.
Rejuvenate our lives.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Throughout our days and nights.
Throughout our days and nights.
We celebrate the journey.
We celebrate the journey.
This precious gift of life.
This precious gift of life.
Thank you. I promised Lee that we would find relevance in this week's Torah portion. And there are a couple of things that are relevant. One is what Henry read for us, which if you take a look back at it, which was on page 163 to 164, you can be anywhere in that neighborhood. At the end of chapter 35 of Midbar, Numbers. Here the text is revisiting the subject that actually was brought up earlier in the Chumash, which is what's called the Arei Miklat, the cities of refuge. If you look back on page 962 at chapter 35, verse 9, we're not going to read the whole text, but if you take a look at the idea that the Rotseach, all right, has a miklat, and we use that word as a shelter, physical shelter even today. If they unintentionally killed somebody, they have a place to hide, to go to hide. Or not to hide, but to stay there until such time as the Kohen Gadol dies, in which case it's kind of a general amnesty. And what's interesting about this, it refers to manslaughter or in an unintentional act that results in a death. It does not refer to someone who has intended to kill somebody. It does not protect. The intentional murderer can run to the city of refuge, grab hold of the altar, say, I'm safe. No, that does not protect. But it protects somebody who is not an out-and-out murderer. And of course, when we're talking about this system, we're talking about a biblical system where there is no, and the Jewish system in general, where there is no distinction between what we would call civil and criminal law. in our system. I don't know if there's any lawyers in the room. Um, the difference, the simple, on the most basic level, what's the difference between civil and criminal law? Civil law is one person or entity versus another. Criminal law is the state versus somebody, the government. State versus other. That's the difference, because it's the whole community. But in the Bible, there's no such distinction. If you murder someone or if you injure someone, their next of kin has the right to take revenge, or to get justice. And so it's, and the misunderstanding about an eye for an eye is that, it's cruel, and by our standards, it's not the way we'd want to do business, but really in the biblical context, it's a limit. It's saying if somebody puts out your eye, you can only take out the other person's eye. Not a great idea to do. I'm not advocating that as an approach to these things these days, but there's no such distinction. So if somebody murdered someone, for example, give me 1 second, if someone murdered someone, it would be that person's next of kin, that person's family, who would be entitled to justice. It's not the state. But what this is saying is that, we're not so quick to convict somebody. And I think the lesson and the inference for our own time is our concern about a criminal justice system. I don't know what's going on here, but I know in Ohio we're having a big issue, and especially in our county, a big issue of a bail system. When do you lock somebody up? When do you not lock somebody up? And it's a national issue, but it's kind of surfaced in Ohio. And the idea of what kind of proofs do you need to convict somebody, or for the government to take action against them. I think that in the worst case scenario, all these police shootings become part of this issue. The Torah doesn't anticipate police shootings, but certainly it becomes part of the issue, is when is it appropriate to take action and when is it not, and what action do we take. I think that's a kind of relevant issue. And I wanted to point out something else from the hospital.
Two things. The bail system as it exists today is many times very unjust.
No kid.
Secondly, when you talk about amnesty or a place where a person who's manslaughter rather than murder is allowed shelter, what about soldiers? Soldiers are killing people allegedly all the time. So where do they fit into this?
Soldiers are
murderers?
All right, so the way I define it, I'm not an attorney, I'm only married to one. All right, so you have to understand the distinction between murder and homicide. Murder is an unauthorized homicide. Most legal systems, unfortunately, have permitted homicide. And an act of war is generally, in most legal, I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, what I'm saying is generally looked at as a permitted homicide. Somebody killing somebody in self-defense, a police officer appropriately firing at somebody, because unfortunately those situations do exist. I mean, our problem is not with police who fire their weapon at somebody who needs to have the weapon fired at them, but is that they're firing at people who shouldn't have weapons fired at them. So the question is whether a homicide is justified or not. An unjustified, unpermitted homicide we call a murder. So acts of war are different. I mean, that's understood in Jewish law, we have two kinds of wars. One of which was basically outlawed after World War I, which is what's called a milchemet reshut, a permitted war. A war to gain economic advantage, to gain territory, all that, which those of you who are a little older than I am will remember prior to World War I was considered a legitimate way of doing business. I don't think we feel that way now. I certainly don't feel that way. And then there was what's called the milchemet mitzvah, Then there's the commanded war, which either God out and out commanded you to do, which is actually what we're reading about in this week's Torah portion. God commands you to go in and take over the land of Israel, or the rabbis agree a defensive war is a milchemet mitzvah, is a commanded war. So the question is it defensive? Whatever. Again, the world ain't as good as it needs to be, but it's better than it used to be. And the idea that war for economic advantage was unacceptable, except we got one going on right now, right? Was unacceptable. That kind of stopped after World War I, pretty much. Although Mr. Putin does not necessarily agree with that.
So the taking of life, in certain cases, is justifiable
Right.
per the Bible.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's justifiable. There were, I mean, a friend of ours who was a police chief, you know, I was talking to him many years ago, after he actually had fired his weapon at somebody. And injured him, but didn't kill him. And we were talking about it, and you know, he said to me, you know, he said, you know, the only time a cop should be firing his weapon is when the person that they're dealing with is either too stupid or too crazy to stop whatever it is. Because unfortunately, those situations do happen. And then there is the, I mean, the Hebrew term in the text this week is rotzeach, which means a murderer, right? We have another term called a rodef, which means to pursue. So if I see someone, or any of us see someone pursuing an innocent person, to harm them, from a Jewish point of view, I have a responsibility to stop them, to save the innocent person. So that's the rodef. Unfortunately, that concept has been perverted so that even in Israel today, and we do it in the United States, except most of our fellow American citizens don't use the Hebrew term. But you know, on January 6th, on January 6th, there were people who deemed that the Vice President of the United States was a rodef. Again, I don't think they use this terminology because they don't know it, but that the Vice President was a threat to people's existence as they saw it, and therefore he was worthy of being hanged. I'm not saying I agree with this, right? I mean, but understand the thinking that's going on there. That, you know, but that's the rodef. Interestingly enough, here's a bit of relevance coming at your head. The difference between most Christians' view of abortion, or many Christians' view of abortion, and the Jewish and Muslim view of abortion on the other side, is that a fetus that's threatening the life of the mother, psychologically or physically, is deemed in the Jewish literature, and there's equivalent Muslim literature, is deemed a rodef, a pursuer, and the mother's life is entitled to be protected. So the fetus can become a rodef. You know, anything that's threatening life. So it does touch on, you know, I think some remarkably modern issues. If you'll come with me, if I may take up another moment of your time, page 970 and 971. This is the end of the Haftarah for today. It's a special Haftarah, as it's one of those in the weeks after the 9th of Av, which was last week. And I'm sorry, I misled you by one page. I misled you by a couple of pages. It's because I moved my own boundary mark. If you come with me to 976 and 977, as you might expect, the Jeremiah here which is not the same as the Jeremiah that we taught earlier. The Jeremiah we taught earlier is not the Haftarah, but it was related to the Torah portion. It talks about Jeremiah talking to the exiles and about how ultimately God is going to take them back. And the end, this is one of those Haftarot where there's a discontiguous verse or so that is added at the end. Haftarot are not like Torah reading. They all don't have to be contiguous, they're cut and pasted, whatever. So there's a discontinuous reading. At the bottom of page 976, there's this one verse from chapter 3 of Jeremiah that is appended to the Haftarah reading. That's the Ashkenazi reading. The Sephardic reading is these couple of verses, the Sephardic ending is these couple of verses from chapter 4, which I think is even more interesting. Im tashuv Yisrael nu'um Adonai, if you return to me, Eli tashuv, if you will, I would translate it, return to me, Israel declares God, then return to me. So we're setting us up for the high holidays and the whole idea of tshuva. We're setting us up, even though this is like leading up to the 9th of Av. The im tasir, but if you will turn away, you need to turn away from the abominations of my presence, and idol worship and stuff like that. But then look at verse 2. Nishbata chai Adonai, and you swear as God lives, which is a biblical form of taking what, and what's important. Emet, truth. Mishpat, judgment, all right, judgment. Tzedakah, righteousness or obeying the law. And it is if we as Israel are true, just, and observe tzedakah, the law, then what's going to happen? And now we hearken back to language that we first saw with Abraham. V'hitbarchu vo goyim, and the nations will bless themselves by us and praise themselves by us as Israel. So how we are viewed, unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. We have our detractors and anti-Semites. It doesn't matter what we do. But Jeremiah's prediction is that, you've got to be, if you want people to think well of the people of Israel, then truth, justice, obeying the law, tzedakah, all its different meanings are important. Otherwise, it's not a guarantee that everybody's going to love us. We know that it's not going to happen. But if we want to have a fighting chance, then we have to do this ourselves. It's in mind. So there's your social justice stuff for today. There's a reason it's called prophetic Judaism. So that's what I got. If somebody has a thought or something, you feel free to comment, correct, whatever.
Okay, so we'll collect the books, and we will rise on page 282 for our closing prayers with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula li'otzeh b'reshit, shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, livnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu notei shamayim ve'yosei haaretz, u'moshe v'karo b'shamayim b'ma'al, u'shchinatu zo, ve'gabhei meromim, Hu Eloheinu Einod, Amen Malkeinu Efes Zulato, Kakatu b'Torato, Ushema, Ushema Echad.
294, we remember those who have recently passed from us: Edward Allen Broida, Burton Applebaum, Gerald Berger, Lloyd Suter, Ivan Fiddler. And we remember those whose yahrzeits occur in this time in years past: Bernard Sonny Boren, Margaret Peggy Cohen, William Dobos, Sanford Eisenhorn, Sally Einhorn, Irving Feigenbaum, Stuart Friedman, Saul Friedman, Morris Friedman, David Fuller, Beverly Geeler, Rebecca Becky Goldberg, Harry Goldsmith, Seymour Cease Gordon, Louis Holler, Judy Herman, Alfred Kahn, Marilyn Leader, Richard Menser, Margaret Nagel, Eddie Person, and Lloyd Weil.
Alta Bloom.
And Ellen Naomi Cohen's 48th yahrzeit was yesterday. She's better known as Mama Cassidy.
Ooh.
Yitgadal
Yitgadal Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Kirutei V'yamlik Malchutei, V'chayechon V'yomechon, V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala U'izman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah V'barak V'alam U'lamei Amaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yithalal Shemei Kedusha V'riku, La'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran V'alma V'yimru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah Mi Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mamav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mamav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Please be seated. And we invite Mr. Steve Merritt to give our announcements this morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. The Relay for Life of South Oakland County presents a charity walk at the zoo. This event will take place on Saturday, August 14th, and the gates open at 7:30 a.m. The opening ceremony will begin at 8:30. This will take place at the Detroit Zoo in Royal Oak. For questions, contact Lisa Redmond. Thank you to everyone who joined us for Havdalah in the Park. If you're looking for a different Havdalah experience, on Saturday, August 20th at 7 p.m., come join us as one community for a healing Havdalah. It will be a time for us to give voice to the struggles we have experienced in the last few years, and through listening to each other, through poetry and prayer, to find hope. We invite you to join us. Save the date for one of our favorite annual events, Shabbat. This will take place Friday, August 26th at 6 p.m. Of note, Rabbi Steve Denker will be in town to join us for this very special event. More details to follow soon. And last of all, on Sunday, August 28th at 1 p.m., Rabbi Denker will be holding a general membership focus group. This will be a time to participate in the conversation about what will inform the search for TKA's next settled rabbi. Please RSV to the office. All members are welcome. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Steve, where's that Havdalah Shabbat, the next one? Where's it gonna be?
Here.
Here.
Okay, outside, no?
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
not
sir.
outside here. Just,
In the building?
yeah.
The healing one?
Oh, the healing thing is here. I thought you were talking about the s'mores. Friday night it'll be out here someplace, out in I'm assuming we're not building a campfire in the building.
So keep an eye on your emails for more information about the focus groups. There's more general focus groups coming, there's more, individualized
Stuff.
focus groups coming. Keep an eye on your email for all of that.
Good.
So we're going to end with peace on page 353 with Ojivo Shalom Aleinu. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu, Ojivo Shalom Aleinu, Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Ojivo Shalom Aleinu, Ojivo Shalom Aleinu, Ojivo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu, Ojevo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for everybody who helped contribute to the service. Janet, thank you very much.